welcome everyone. As you know, I'm Ida Norris, and with me is Dana Roberts, our hostess extraordinaire, my assistant. She's doing a great job helping us with all of the IT tonight. So, Dana, thank you. And thank you to everyone who being regulars and joining in. And we're pretty excited. We are hoping to have some of our judges jump on with us tonight. We know that we may be able to get Joanne Williams to jump on with us and things. So hang in there with us because we have some interesting stuff coming along. We'll get started on Judges Jargon tonight. This is the next to the last one, and next time is our last in our Startup WD 101, and I'm sure we're going to go ahead with some others, but next time, the first Tuesday of the month at 7, the final follow-up will be how to get yourself into the ring, what to do at the end, how to find shows, how to get your entries organized, how to prepare yourself and be ready to go, and where to get help with all of that. So that's next month's topic, and we're pretty excited. Let's get started on this Judges Jargon. We actually had people send us in some interesting comments, so we have those coming. I thought this was hysterical. Dana found this new dressage scoring definitions. It was so funny. And you can see, 0, what was that? 1, was that a movement? 2, ooh, could have been Ben, or what was it? 3, movement recognizable but horrible. 4, ugly, but they did it. 5, slightly better than 4. 6, most of the pieces in place but boring. 7, pleasant to watch. 8, really pleasant to watch. 9, wow. And 10, awesome. Did we get that on film? I thought that was so funny. That's one of those dressage memes that's hysterical. Over here on the right is our official list, actually, of all of our numbers. And you know, our judges actually, we memorized this. So sometimes I'm sitting there going, 1 very bad, 2 bad, 3 fairly bad. I think that was very bad. You know, like maybe not in Western because we don't have this, but I might be in a dressage ring watching a horse rearing going, if I'm not ringing it out, what am I giving it? Very bad. So, and very bad happens sometimes, and even 0 not performed. So sometimes you're going to get these numbers. So 0 not performed, 1 very bad, 2 bad, 3 fairly bad, 4 insufficient. That means that somehow you didn't meet the criteria. 5 marginal, and FYI, that used to be in dressage, and years ago, about 15 years ago, that said sufficient. And we here in America, we changed that to marginal because the English word sufficient kind of is sort of like satisfactory. It's like, well, that's okay. It's okay. People thought that a 5 was okay. And we were trying to say, 5 is really kind of sketchy. It's marginal. And we changed that word to marginal. So that's kind of interesting. 6 says satisfactory, 7 fairly good, 8 good, 9 very good, and 10 excellent. In those parentheses there, I want to make very plain to you that those are my thoughts. See those little parentheses there? Because I want to talk about that with you. 6, satisfactory, and we know that that's 6.0 and 6.5. I think of that and I remember to tell my students, satisfactory, are you thinking that's okay? I want you to think of that more like a C in high school. It's okay, you're passing, but it's not great because in 6 or 6.5, something fairly significant is kind of not happening. Like you're doing okay, but there's something missing out of your movement or in your connection or in your impulsion, and you're doing okay, but you need more, and you need something to push it up there to fairly good. So we have a lot of fairly good rides, and we have a lot of fairly good movements, and you need to get to those fairly goods to be kind of successful, and also to be considering moving your horse along from one level to another. If you're not getting quite a few fairly goods in a test, you've got something significant missing. And so learning what these words mean to the judges is sort of what we're talking about tonight. So that's it. The other thing that I tell myself constantly, and I tell new judges, because new judges ask us older judges for, our comments and how we feel about things, and they ask our opinion. And I do say to people, I say, excellent doesn't say it's perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just excellent. But a lot of times when I give a 10, you know what I think about it as? Like I'm a trainer too, and I'm a writer. And when I can't think of anything to suggest to you guys to do it better, if I don't have anything to say, I write a 10 on that paper and I give 10s and I give them regularly. And I give 9s. I give a lot of 9s and a lot of 8s. Center lines, you all know I got a thing about center lines. I got a thing. And I give big scores on center lines that are good with a really elegant salute. Oh yeah. So anyway, you need to be memorizing this and be really good at any moment. What's a 6? Satisfactory. What's a 7? Fairly good. 8, good, very good, excellent. Be able to recite that in your mind, because 3, if you're riding around thinking, man, that was a disaster. A disaster is way worse than insufficient. That's got to be 3 or 2. And you don't want to take it personally. It's not personal. Judges hate giving low scores, but on the other hand, fair's fair. And there's a problem in that, if someone's loping along and their horse breaks, and you kind of have to give a 4 for that when they break gait, that gets to be insufficient. But that's a whole different ball game than a horse that's also loping along that comes in later and then throws its head up and its mouth is open and its tongue sticks out. That's got to be fairly bad. And I have to give that person 1 point lower than the person at least that I gave the insufficient to. It's not okay for a judge to give everybody that's doing something not good and insufficient, because what'll happen is I still have to judge everybody and they still have to be placed. And if I don't use those numbers, then everybody gets the same score. Maybe the right horse that was a little tiny bit better did not win. So be patient with judges when they have to give you a low score. I'm sorry, none of us like them. But honestly, I got a 3 on a test in the international this year. I did put that test in. The whole rest of the test was really nice. But when I went across the diagonal in the level 5 test, and I was supposed to be doing 3 tempi changes, my mare kind of went bananas, and I don't know what would happen. Something caught her attention or whatever. I kind of had this bolt thing. I had a couple of lay behind changes. That's a 3. And the judge gave it to me. She had just given me an 8-5. And then I got a 3, and then I turned the corner, and the next movement's a 7. We recovered. But that was a fair mark. And if she had only given me a 4, that would be really unfair. So we have to give them. We're really sorry. We don't like doing it, but fair's fair. And we do better if our judges are super honest with us. So they're trying to help. Hopefully they give you some positive comments.
So I have a question, Ida, about the scale of scoring and stuff. So
I want to back up there. Yeah.
Well, just about, so when you think it's time to move up, when you're getting like 7s and above, but is there anything like remarks wise that a judge would say to kind of indicate like, hey, maybe you should move up?
Well, it's not super common to have a comment on the test about moving up, because we know that sometimes people can't move up. Like there are people that are in intro because they can only walk and trot, and I would have no idea that rider's back is so bad that they can't lope. So I would never write on somebody's test, you need to move up. Occasionally, excuse me, a judge, I have seen a comment on a test. I will say that a judge would say, no, basics look really good today. Rider and horse, this team looks ready to move on. but you're not required to move up. So they're kind of careful about that, but you might get a comment like that, but we're terrified. We don't write it very often because we have no idea if you're unable to. This horse might be super sound to walk and jog, but it's not sound to lope, or it has kissing spine and we don't know this. So this horse has a light rider and a light saddle and it can walk and jog, but it doesn't lope, or it could be anything. We have no idea what's going on with people. So we're careful. You might get a comment like that. It'd be nice if you did. It is really important though. And two things to think about the scoring system. As you go up in the levels, it is incredibly hard at level 4 and 5. Like a talented rider and a pretty steady horse, an intro, basic, first level, riders get 70s all the time in those levels, or frequently. I won't say all the time, but once you've had some instruction or someone's helped you or you're knowledgeable, you get going with your training, you can get a 70 in Western dressage. It's doable. It's really doable. And with some study and some work, even very average horses and riders can really get a 70. It's so nice. It's so nice. But the thing is as you go up the levels, when you get up to level 4 and level 5, you're going to see the very best riders, the top notch riders. It's like it gets harder and harder and harder to get those 70s. So one thing, if you're a railbird, if you're watching people and you're trying to understand about this, their requirements are not only that the horse is on the bit and that it's supple and that it's super engaged and it's super forward, but then they have the criteria of these really, really hard movements. And so anytime that they can't meet the requirement, like the horse might be super uphill, super on the bit, nicely forward, all connected, and then they were supposed to do something. So let's say, for example, a shoulder in. And this horse is just beautiful uphill and on the bit or whatever, but it's 4 tracks. Well, all of a sudden they're insufficient in the criteria of the movement, but they should have an 8 for on the bitness and whatever. It doesn't matter. You get a 4. Because now the criteria has 2 parts. It's not just the quality of your connectedness and engagement and impulsion. You also have the criteria of the movements, and they're getting harder and harder and harder. And then, besides all of that, the tests are written that the patterns are increasingly difficult, and this becomes like ice skating, where they talk about combinations. So this ice skater had to do a spin, and then she had to do a jump, and then she had to do a land, and then another jump, and that's called a combination. And in these levels, we have combinations, and they're written for us to possibly fail, because we're trying to show, can the rider ride fast? Can the horse accept the aids quickly? Can it move from one thing to another to another? Will it extend and contract easily, quickly, make fast rein adjustments and change bend completely while doing a flying change? It's nutty. So people on the rail, they're like, hey, I'm an intro rider and I'm getting an 80. And there's a really, really well-known competitor at level 5, and they just won the worlds with a 66. And in intro, if you have a 66, you're doing fine. That's great. But there's some things that you could be improving to get to basic. And at level 5, it's a whole different ballgame. It gets increasingly hard to get those bigger scores. So educational wise, be kind if you're being a railbird, because as they go up, the scores don't actually stay up that high. It's increasingly difficult to get that. So
you shouldn't be discouraged if like you're getting,
right,
72s in intro, and then you move up and you go down, and you move up and you go down, because there's an adjustment. Okay.
Exactly. And not only that, you should look at the top levels in those scores and realize that it's people really get anywhere from 70 to 80 in intro, but there's only 2 gates there. Then they move to basic, and the top notch riders 75, and then you get to level 1, and the top riders is kind of 70 to 73, that, because it becomes increasingly difficult to meet all the criteria as you train along. And we don't get discouraged about it, but it's important to talk about within our culture so that people coming up aren't like, well, I used to get 80s, and maybe, but it becomes increasingly difficult. So that was a good point to bring out. So thank you. All right, if we're good, we'll move to the next one. I wanted you all to learn some of, I mean, I know we have very experienced people in here, and see we've got all of our really our cool experienced people, but we may have some beginners too. And if you're looking at your papers, I was trying to put in some of the abbreviations in case you get these abbreviations on your papers. So here is an awesome horse square, nice, beautiful salute. You can really, you know me with the salutes. I just love really clear salutes. This lady's got a great one. Thank you, thank you. When you see that word balanced and it has to do with a halt, it means that it was square. So unbalanced is the horse wasn't square. And is square important? Well, there's a lot of halts. And people are always saying to me, well, I was in intro, and I'm looking at them like, I don't care. Because whatever happened to showmanship, you guys? Like, get your horses square on the ground, and we're allowed to give voice cues and all different kinds of things. So all of my horses have a voice cue to square up. And if my level 5 horse dips off today and she's not paying attention to my leg or whatever, and she doesn't stop square, I give her the voice aid, and off she comes. And people are like, it's so hard to get a horse balanced in the halt. And yes, it is. But if you would cross train, you can get this too, with or without weight. And you're allowed to do that. And we're allowed to do all these cool things like have a voice aid for a horse. So get to those balanced square halts, because there's a lot of coinage in there for better scores. Even the intro tests have 4 halts in one of them there. There's the beginning and the end halt, and then the 2 halts in the middle. It's crazy to lose points on those. And anytime that one of them isn't balanced, you can be in the 6-ish range. Everything else might be great about that halt, but you don't get 7, 8, 9, 10 unless they're at least square. And then lots of other things like soft to the bridle and immobile. Being immobile is really important. And don't forget, when you're asking that horse to be immobile, sit still. Because the judge's perception of immobility is this horse, but don't be adjusting your underwear, jacking your saddle sideways and all that stuff. Sit still and be quiet so that I can see. And some of those say 4 seconds. For heaven's sakes, count 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. The judge needs a second to judge. So if it says 4 seconds, give it to him. It's great. You'll make points if you do. It's worth doing. Okay, impulsion. Impulsion is this word which, everyone's like, okay, we have all of these terms for it. And all of these terms below these words are some positive and some negative, because you're going to get positive and negative comments on your test. So I put them all down. But this horse is definitely trucking. One hind leg, like, whoa, and uphill. So this is showing you impulsion. Look at the engagement of this hind leg, incredible ground reach. So when they don't show impulsion, and we have to just review impulsion. Impulsion is the word we use for power in any gait which has suspension. And the walk does not have suspension because a leg is on the ground all the time in the walk. So when a judge is trying to talk to you about impulsion or energy in the walk, they can't use the word impulsion, because impulsion implies suspension, like this horse here is off the ground because she's pushing so hard in the lengthened jaw. So they're going to say in the walk energy. And here needs and NDS is the abbreviation for needs. And you need to get used to seeing this. And then bad handwriting, if you're at a real horse show and they're using scribes with bad handwriting. So get used to needs, NRG, needs energy. This is the abbreviation for energy, needs energy. The horse, they might say it's sluggish. It needs to be in front of the leg. It needs march or purpose or energy. They say these in the walk. When you don't have enough energy, the horse is sluggish, the walk is slow. Purpose, when they say purpose, they're looking at your horse feeling like it's wandering, that it isn't really marching, and maybe you don't have it between both legs and it's really going somewhere. It just put its head down and it's just dragging along. So if they'd say that you don't have purpose, you need energy, you need it to march in 4-beat time, and you need to look like it's directly going somewhere, get your horse to walk like it looks at the end of a trail ride when it's getting near the barn. That's what we're looking for, that it's got all that energy going. So
I have a question, Ida.
yes,
Under impulsion, would it be if you get a comment needs swing over back? Would that be this?
that's a little different. So let's talk about that. Swing over the back is when they are, and are you talking, that was in the walk, right? You got that comment in the walk?
So that comment was a circle right 20-meter working jog, and that was an introductory level test 3.
Okay. I will say this, I don't use that term very much in intro. And maybe that's insulting, but at intro level, you don't know if you have beginners, you don't know who's in there. It might be a professional, but I don't use that much. And swing is about, does the horse's back look loose? Which the back being loose and having swing over the back, which is, we know that right here, the lumbar doesn't move sideways, but the lumbar does undulate up and down. And it is part of the process, part of the biomechanical process that occurs when this horse lifted the thoracic, and this horse is so far off the ground. So she just lifted her thoracic. You see the pole coming up, the neck lifts. She lifted all of this, lifted the saddle, and that undulates. So that's swing. Normally, when judges use swing, they talk about it in the walk. They use the word swing a lot more in the walk. And that's when you look at a horse from behind and it is just walking like this, like Marilyn Monroe. And it's like and especially in a horse like this mare who has wide rear end, she's robust from behind, but they're just sashaying. So we use swing a lot there. I was surprised to hear it in an intro test. It's not wrong, but a lot of times we assume people that are only walking and jogging aren't maybe sophisticated enough to really get into swing. I would have said back's tight or needs to be more supple in the back, but that's what it is, that the back was not supple. That's more that. But and that has to do with the horse being able to propulse the power forward and carry it all the way through. And now comes the circle of aids. It comes back to my hand, and this horse is reaching forward into the hand and looks elastic. You don't see any tension at this moment in the neck. You don't see her mouth open. The eye looks soft. The ears look steady. That's throughness. And we happen to get lucky and get a good picture of it. It doesn't happen a lot for everybody every minute. So good question though. So thrust and impulsion, here we go. Activity is another word. When we've said impulsion, we've told you we don't want to be negative and say you're sluggish. So we'll say you need activity. Activity can be used in any gait, including the walk. So it's another euphemism for energy, thrust, impulsion. Labored is used some. And it's not that it's not okay to use it in the walk and the trot, jog. You can use it, but labored is specifically used a lot in the lope. And when the horse is downhill, looks sluggish, takes short steps, Labored is used a lot in lateral work, and that's coming for some of you folks, and some of you are already there. So for my judges that are out there, they know that labored is connected with lope and lateral work a lot. But again, another euphemism, another term for get moving, get moving, need energy. So next, again, we have the balance, and we're talking about the word balance, but other words that will be on your test relating to balance: uphill, self-carriage. This is a beautiful, I think this is Kim. It's Kim's horse. And we have some more advanced pictures. This, she told me, was when this horse was at basic. And this horse is in a, what we would refer to as a horizontal balance. And that we sometimes write on a test. That is not a negative comment. It's a descriptive comment of where a horse is in its development. This horse, right at this moment, it has a lot of thrust. It doesn't bend its legs yet much, so it doesn't engage, but it's pushing, it's covering ground. It has great ground cover, and it's in a horizontal balance. And I drew this picture on here, I drew this line on here so that you could see horizontal balance, because the pole is at least level to this horse's withers. Now, when a horse is downhill, that pole is below this point. And this happens by fact of the horse curling behind the vertical, curling, or the whole neck goes lower. How about, hey, you were going downhill, maybe you're out trail riding or something. But all of the comments that have to do with balance, these are some of them: uphill, self-carriage, horizontal balance. This is it. This is a great picture of horizontal balance, which is just where this horse is at this moment. And I might, if the whole test went great, and this horse at intro or basic might get a 75, 80. This horse, if it looked like that through the whole test, would get a great score. But I would probably say, today this horse is in horizontal balance, but presented a nice test. Rider was tactful, nice. When things go wrong, though, and this horse goes downhill, or any horse goes downhill, then these comments come around. On the forehand, strung out downhill, in long connection, needs uphill, needs self-carriage. This is not a picture of long connection, and I didn't have one. But long connection is another way of saying strung out. And maybe the horse is not giving in the jaw. It just stretches out, but it doesn't give, it doesn't come into connection. It doesn't give in the jaw and pull. One thing that's really nice about this picture, and I actually gave an interview this week to a gal that's a dressage rider that wanted to write an article for her GMO about Western dressage. So then there's this long conversation. And before I did, boy, I sent her a whole bunch of information to learn about Western dressage. And what's the first thing they always ask us? You guys ride two-handed with a curve. And the first thing I said to us, well, 90% of us have a snaffle mouthpiece in there, which works completely different from anything you guys know about. And then I began to talk to her about that. But my sidebar on this is, can you see that this rein is so soft? And this is an amazing picture, because when you ride, the theory of Western dressage and two-handed riding is that the outside rein is responsible for the height and the length of the neck. The half halts on the outside rein when you ride two-handed are responsible for the height, for setting the horse's head. And the inside rein is responsible for beginning to get lateral pole flexion, which is your bend, and it supports the outside rein. And this rein is soft. I don't know if you can see that that rein really has no tension in it. And this picture would have been great to show to that interviewer, because her attitude was, well, we're just leaning on these curves. And I'm like, that right there shows that this rider has released her half halt, and for moments that this horse is capable of keeping its own balance and this rein goes soft every other thing. If we had a video, I bet every other thing, and in the corner, that rein would go soft. And at this level, although this is not uphill, this is the amount of self-carriage that is good for an intro or basic horse. This is all I can expect this horse to have, but it is very good for this level of horse to see this rein get soft. So kudos on this photograph. Awesome job. And we're looking for that kind of thing. It's so exciting. Here we go. Unsteady. Oh, I blew it. Sorry. Got excited with too much impulsion. Be nice to this lady. She's a friend of mine, and she's always willing to do everything wrong so that I can have videotape to show you guys. So this is a tiny little videotape of unsteady connection. And also, we're going to push this button, unsteady connection. And he needs energy and impulsion to get a better connection. And you can see that he is not tracking up. So his little hind legs are kind of sticking out behind him. He's not bending his hind legs and stepping forward. And you can see he's not tracking up, which means that he doesn't reach forward. So what would the judge write on this girl's test paper right at this moment? Unsteady, unsteady to the hand, unsteady connection, needs energy and impulsion to improve. Mary, who's willing to be a guinea pig and show, warts, which we all have moments that aren't fun. So unsteady to the bridle. And there it is again, one more time. Next, above the connection. So we use connection, but dressage uses the terms above the bit. And sometimes our judges write this on this too. It was amazing to me. People did send me their papers to look at. I got a bunch of papers to look at before I wrote this presentation for you. And it was amazing in Western Dressage how many of our judges did say above the bit, because some of us are using bits and that's perfectly okay. We generally use connection, but above the bit. Hollow top line. Well, hollow top line. Anytime that the horse's top line looks like this, and this horse is hollow enough to be considered inverted. And that is a very good word for our judges to use when a horse is quite far hollow in the top line. Of course, needs, NDS, needs to be rounder, needs a lower neck, needs acceptance, needs to give in the bowl and jaw and lower the neck. Braced top line. Horse is just slightly above the bit or tight in the connection or top line. Sometimes too much weight is in the reins, or the rider is actually bracing on the reins. I did not have a picture of this. There's plenty of it out there in the videotapes out on the internet, but we don't have permission from the people, and we have laws that prevent us from just grabbing people's pictures, But we do see a lot of this braced top line, and it's when your horse is almost round enough, but they look tight and they look braced. And to a lot of people, they're saying, well, my horse is on the bit. And I'm like, no, not really. You have it pulled into a headset. You have it stuck into a frame, but it isn't through, it isn't round, it isn't reaching forward to your hand. All of those aspects that have to be there for it to be through. How are you doing, Dana? I know that you had the chat section open so people could ask comments. And we also are looking for, did our surprise guest pull in?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, hey, all right.
Yes. I mean, yeah, I do have some remarks here, like further remarks in general impressions. So someone had some nice moments and show some good basics, just needs to get more confident, familiar with the test pattern. I think the writer said, when I was eliminated for 3 off courses.
Oh my goodness, that was what was written on her paper, that she had good basics, but she needed to get more familiar with the path. Okay, because she was eliminated for 3 areas. Well, that was pretty kind. I mean, that was really kind.
That was a nice way of saying that. Yeah,
that's a good one.
I think I have one remarks like talented pair, rider needs to ride more forward into following, elastic hands, elbows, I think, okay, here I'm battling the handwriting, redirecting too much in the front. I'm not sure what that means.
Oh, what that meant.
Yeah.
Yeah, redirecting too much in the front. So she said, well, to begin with, the comment about she wanted your arms and elbows to be more elastic. And they can only write so much, but most of us, our forearms aren't triangulated enough. And if your forearms are not triangulated and your hands pretty close together, you lose elasticity and the ability to follow. And when the horse is stretching forward to the bridle, then you're not elastic enough. So then what was the last part of that comment was
Redirecting too much in the front.
redirecting. So I think what she was trying to say there was that, maybe in an effort to keep the horse round and you weren't quite elastic enough, that you were trying to keep it round by using more bit movements than she would like. And possibly, steering with the bit gets tricky too. If a horse isn't forward, because she said it's not forward enough. And when a horse doesn't go forward, you end up bit steering because you don't have enough forwardness to just look and turn your body. They won't go off your seat because they're not in front of you. And so then you get into bit steering. So I think that she was getting at some of that. That was probably part of that.
Yeah.
We have a surprise guest with us tonight. So I wanted to introduce her and bring her on to the call. We just had to wait for her to come in because she couldn't be with us right at the beginning. Joanne Williams. Do you all know Joanne Williams? She's a large R judge. She's a colleague of ours. And Joanne was going to join our call. Are you there, Joanne?
Yes, I am. I've been listening since the start
Wonderful.
through the speakers of my car, but I made it home and I am really enjoying the entire presentation.
Oh, thank you. And thank you so much for all that, all of your comments. How are we doing so far, Joanne? Have you had some comments that you have seen that you liked or some favorite ones?
Well, I just typed into the chat one of my favorites, which was years ago. I was riding a nice young horse who was having some moments. And in my collective marks was lovely horse when he stays on the ground.
Oh my goodness. Oh dear.
We were showcasing his airs above.
Oh dear. Well, and of course, were you in WD? Because now we have the blatant disobedience rule.
Yeah, I would have classified it as playful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, that was certainly kind. We have some.
I don't remember any really nasty or unfair comments from any judges, especially our WD judges, but I have had some comments that I felt could have been a little bit more useful,
Yes.
such as if I'm doing a movement that has multiple things in the directives and the comment simply is more.
Oh, you don't, more what is probably what you want. More what?
Yeah, more what would be really helpful.
Yes. We're
So
coming
that
up. We're
has
coming
to
up.
be about the worst.
Excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt. We're coming up on in a little bit. I'm going to call on you some more. We're going to move along for a minute, Joanne, but stay with us because I have things I want to ask you about as we go along. So hang with us. We moved to the slide, folks, tempo, which, as you know, is not rhythm. It's the speed and the repetition of the football. And the words that they're going to talk to you about is going to be quick, that it varies. They might write running, tempo change, and rushed. One thing to keep in mind is when a horse makes a tempo change, two things can happen. If they go forward, if it got quicker, they lost their balance and you didn't have them in the outside rein and you didn't have them in balance. But the other problem is if it slows down, you didn't have impulsion. So a tempo change, when someone says you have a tempo change, that's kind of a help to you. But if they indicate, if a judge indicates to you what happened with the tempo change, then you and the trainer, or if you know, if you're a super horse woman yourself and you know all these terms and you get what's happening, you're going to come to the conclusion, oh, it was running, it got quick. I didn't use enough half halts, and I didn't have my horse balanced, and it wasn't in connection. And if it slowed down, I didn't have enough impulsion or energy. So those are going to help you with how it varied, and that hopefully they're going to tell you. This was just to be funny. We might need to laugh, but the only test where you get excited about a 70 dressage and Western dressage, it is pretty funny. And the judge says you needs to be more uphill. Well, that's, gee, there was a lot of power there. So those are some of our memes just to make us laugh. We were talking about connection, and that is on, you know, here's my wheel up behind me to keep reminding us about connection. And you know, that's this little one, I'm going the wrong way right down here, but it's a euphemism. It's another word, another phrase for, are the horses on the bit round to the connection? Are they round? Are they accepting, as well as setting their heads? Do they accept our aids also? And submission, which is a tricky word. The reason that submission is in regular dressage tests, and we use harmony in Western dressage though, but one thing that you should know is that our tests were originally written by the Federal Equestrian International, FEI. They were written all in French. And when they translated the words to English, this was a direct translation word into English, which in English, it's kind of like, we think of the word submission sort of like truckling subservience. And they think of the word submission in French is more like willingly acquiescing. And that is a whole different cultural thing. And we have harmony because of this. We do use the word submission, but it is not in the final remarks boxes and too much. And we have harmony instead of submission. And that's why, because it has to do with the culture of this word and the fact that it was translated to English. So just a little history for us there. Connection is through the top line and back, and we were talking about swing earlier. So Dana, thank you for that. When the rider's aids can connect the horse's back to the front without resistance. And the picture of the horse in the extended jog was showing lack of tension while she was reaching into the bridle and doing the lengthened jog. That was a good photograph to see that the muscles were soft and not tight and without resistance. Self-carriage, the horse carries itself in balance without leaning on the hand or taking support on the reins. And occasionally when those reins get soft, like we were just looking at that beautiful horse that I had drawn a line across the horizontal balance horse, but the rein got nice and soft on that horse. Even though that horse is not uphill at that moment for that level, that horse was showing some self-carriage. At any given moment, a disaster happens for any of us. And it can be momentary, or we could have a whole test where for a moment, the horse gets behind the vertical, and you see it from the front of the face. The horse is, sometimes I write on the test, face behind vertical, because if you just write behind vertical on the test, the writer thinks that they lean back sometimes. So I sometimes say on the test, face behind vertical, but curling, short in the neck. You see the neck got short, it's not stretched forward. Pull low, pull dropping is another comment. And it can happen just for a second. For this rider, she just held her half halt for a moment too long, and maybe, you know, something distracted the horse and it went for a moment behind. But you will sometimes see entire tests like this. In Western dressage, if people ask you, you know, are you happier if the horse is just ever so slightly above the bit or it's behind the bit? We're really not fond of them being behind the bit. And never, a horse behind the bit is never going to be much above a 6 and down, 6, 5, 4. It's really hard to get a good score. And if it goes on and on, if it's just for a second, it's no big deal. Adjustments happen for people. But if a whole test look like this, it's bad, because what happens is the horse is unable to step through behind and their back gets tight and they get shorter and shorter. There's a lot of moment problems that occur if it's going on and on. So if it's momentary, it's not a big deal. It's a tiny deduction, or it was just for a second while the horse readjusted its balance. But when a whole test goes like that, the judges are going to be writing things on the bottom. And it's be like, oh no, this is where, whoops, I really wanted to have Joanne here. So Joanne, we are up to the word irregular.
Oh boy.
I wanted Joanne here too, because what we're trying to say to people is when you get a test that says irregular, the horses are regular, you may also get some other words in there. So unlevel means that the horse is picking up its feet, front or back, one side higher than the other. So uneven is the length of the step is varying. And in the walk, if the judge sees in the walk that especially one side or the other, or horses that have inflammation in the hocks frequently travel long short in the walk. One side steps forward further than the other, and you can see it in the free walk. And the judge will write long short, and that means it was uneven in length. And there are two definitions of problems in Western dressage, where the horse is basically what horsemen used to call lame, markedly lame. And WD 126.8 talks about markedly lame and you are eliminated, and there's no recourse or discussion. You can't protest it. If the judge thinks at that moment that you're lame, if your horse is lame enough for them to stop the test, you don't go on, you get off, you get down, and you get out. And there is also in the general rules of USEF GR 840, which a lot of people don't know about, and it says the horse has to be serviceably sound. It's the same thing. If I decide to eliminate you at this moment, I am saying I don't think you should be riding your horse. That's all I'm saying. I'm not telling a vet that your horse is lame. You can take your horse to a vet later, and you can pay $4,000 and have that vet tell you that there's nothing wrong with that horse. At that moment, I didn't think you should be riding that horse. And I stopped that test because I'm advocating for the horse. And it could be something as crazy as he stepped on his heel bulb on the way in, and then he limped. Or he has a rock in his shoe and it falls out before you get out. So by the time you get out there and you go to check him, he doesn't look lame to you, he looked lame to me. But one thing that you really, really need to pay attention to, and this happens online and in regular shows, when you see irregular in your test more than twice, there is something seriously wrong. We are not allowed to tell you things. It's really hard for us because some of us, like I really have a lot of expertise in gait evaluation. I've been to literally hundreds of lameness tests with lameness specialist vets that are specializing in this. And I can tell you if your horse is hockey. I called up a competitor after an online show a couple of weeks ago because her horse really had some serious problems. I wasn't allowed to write it on the test. I contacted the organizer of the show and I said, do you know this gal? Is she a kind lady? Do you think she would be okay if I called her? I'd really like to talk to her about something. I told her that her horse had the symptoms of navicular. She took her horse to the vet. It did have navicular. I got a wonderful, wonderful email back about a few weeks later that they were beginning to treat the horse and he looked amazingly different. And her horse had never, ever felt, it was feeling better, and she had never felt her horse feel better. You can't do that in a live show, and I could only do that after I was finished judging. But we are prohibited from being a vet and saying things. On the other hand, we have a lot of expertise, and at the moment that we tell you the horse is irregular, it's not like you're sitting sideways and caused it. Joanne, you want to jump in here because I can tell I'm hanging out all by myself, but I know you have my back.
Definitely. Um, I will be a little forgiving if I see, especially in a corner, the first time I see an uneven step or an unlevel step, I'll kind of think to myself, I hope that was the footing, and I may comment on it. But when I see it on every corner and every circle, then definitely that has to be an elimination. The horse may appear to be sound on straight lines, but as soon as you ask them to turn, it's obvious that there's a problem.
It's a tough call. It makes us so stressed. It
Well, we
doesn't.
don't want to do it.
Yes. We don't
And
want to do it because we want people to be able to come in, and we know they're going to be upset. And you're going to be upset for two reasons. One, you wanted to show and we had to stop you. So that's the first one. It's the elephant in the room. But the second one is everyone is a good horseman. And now we've just told you there's something wrong. And now, if you haven't realized that you're upset because, well, I didn't know there was anything wrong with him, and everyone feels terrible. They feel terrible that they didn't realize there was something wrong with their horse. And they're terrified about finding out what the news is of what it is. And we're all horsewomen, so we know this, that we're going to be upset. But if you have irregular written on your test, you really need to look at it. You need to get to a trainer and evaluate if, the horse is it's just a step or two here and there, and, it's through the corner and you don't have them balanced. Or you're seeing this, if you see it really more than 3 or 4 times on a test, and the judge is indicating that it pretty much went all the way through the movement, that really is, you need a lameness exam. I hate to say it, but you do. Horses don't limp for no reason.
Well, I have a good comment in here. Tammy said Western Dressage has the most caring judges.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We really do. And people would never believe it, but don't we agonize, Joanne? I know we do. We don't sleep sometimes. We finish a horse show and we're still fussing about, did I get that horse placed right? Did I get that worded right so that person will understand? How do you feel about that, Joanne? Does that happen to you sometimes?
oh, it happens to me all the time. And if we have to eliminate someone, we agonize about that. But, as far as the unsoundness goes, a lot of times, like the horse with navicular, um, if we see those short strides and we say nothing, we are not being advocates for the horse. And we hate to do it, and we hate for people to feel bad. I like to use the words today or
Yeah.
right now. And that way, I think it softens the blow a little, or at least I hope it does.
Yes. And the other thing is too, is literally we occasionally have horses that I've seen a horse look absolutely fabulous outside of the ring, look fine. I looked up and I had a minute and the horse was going around the ring. That horse was fine. And then it came into the ring and she turned the corner and did a lengthening jog. And at the end of that lengthening jog, that horse was like this. And I rang the bell instantly because you're terrified of pulling a suspensory. And that is that right there, that problem when a horse goes dead lame after a lengthening, that's, it can be a rip suspensory. And I stopped her right then. And I'm like, hey, you know, your horse was really lame. And she goes, oh no, I'm glad you stopped me. Like that felt terrible. I want to get down. And we're not supposed to get down in the ring, but she knew she didn't want to ride and I was eliminating her. And she got down in the ring and led her horse out and got the vet. And it did turn out his suspensory was okay. but he had pulled something right then. And she thanked me and thanked me and thanked me and thanked me. She had to withdraw from the rest of the competition because she wanted to take him home and treat him. But it really did, something went wrong right then. I don't know what happened. I mean, our ring seemed to be fine. I don't think there was any holes or whatever. I don't know what happened with the horse, but so it can happen. And so we just have to be careful. And our job is to look after your horses. And we're sorry if we have to do this, but we want to be sure the horses are okay. So we appreciate patience. Needs ground cover. And here's the abbreviation: NDS, ground, GRD, CVR. It's always going to be on free walk. Needs longer steps. Needs longer steps. Does not track up. Work for overtrack. Lacks reach. That is usually in the forearm and the stretching of the leg forward. Only tracks up. I think I'm hoping that all of you know tracks up, but does the hind leg step into the print of the front leg is what they're looking for. And in Western Dressage, in free walk, it doesn't say that you're required to have overtrack. It did used to. They have eased up on that, but it's the same old thing that I've told you before. If you have overtrack, you are going to be rewarded, and we're looking for it. We want it, because when we see a horse is overtracking, it's headed for the barn, it's stretching its nose forward, it's reaching to the hand, it's moving along, it has energy. So better, good, clean walks and longer steps. So when they keep saying to you, needs longer steps, and we really don't want the horses short tracking. We don't want that. So you've got to get them to track up. And if you can get over track, that shows that their back is relaxed. And as we were talking about with Dana swinging, remember in the free walk that the horse not only has to stretch out, but it's supposed to stretch down too. And we're hoping its pole, this rider didn't quite have time to get her horse all stretched. And it was probably as she progressed along, because it takes time to get a horse to stretch out and down. So she hadn't quite gotten to the point where this horse got below the withers, but downward also is part of the requirement in free walk, and we want to be on it. This horse is doing a great job showing us the V, which is right here on its legs. And in the walk, I took this picture and grabbed it and drew on it with my funny little pen to show you that when a horse has a clear rhythm, the quickest way to see it is from the side. And when you see this V right here that's drawn on here, when you see that V, you know that horse has a clear rhythm, because when that V occurs, it's got a 4-beat walk, no questions asked. And I can move along while I'm judging. I can look at the rider's connection, and are they steering, and are they getting to the letter, because I already looked at that one. Rhythm's clear. When I don't see that V from the side, then I have to spend more time counting the footfalls, being sure that the 4-beat gait is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, instead of when the beat is not equally placed, it might go more like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You see the intervals between the timing of the legs changes, and that's when it is not a clear march, because a clear march rhythm is that the timing between the beats is the same: 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And horses that walk slowly, like 1, 2, 3, 4, that's not march rhythm. That's not a Sousa marching band. And we're looking for horses to march in the walk. So clear rhythm, and this is the abbreviation for rhythm, lacks clear rhythm. Anytime in a test that you see this, pay attention, because you all know that that is the first arm in the training wheel. And if you have messed up rhythm, you have harmed the horse. Remember that our first premise is do no harm. Do not ruin the rhythm of the horse's gaits. So go back and pay attention to Is it relaxed enough? Remember, the second one, is the horse relaxed enough? Is it in connection? Do I have enough energy to be sure that the horse is comfortable, that the rhythm is okay? And this is the same horse we looked at in the horizontal balance, and a couple of years later, woohoo, this thing is uphill, wowzers. And then look at the angles on this horse for engagement. And this horse clearly has a 3-beat lope, because here's the first foot, then you have the diagonal, and then you have the last forefoot, and you can see it in this picture. So this is an awesome picture. So rhythm, as well as the walk, the jog must be a clear 2-beat gait. And if the jog is not a clear 2-beat gait, it is irregular. And how might it be irregular? When you see a horse that has no suspension, it is tracking. Now, short tracking, when it's a little bit, an inch, okay? We're not talking about, just a little bit of short tracking. That's not the end of the world, especially for some of our horses. That there are some quarter horses, and there are a few horses that are either super long back, or some of the mules have really long backs sometimes, or the quarter horses, they're a little tiny bit downhill. Okay, short tracking isn't the end of the world, except for when it's huge. 6 or 8 inches of short tracking, you start looking at that horse because its back is not swinging. It has a very tight back. It's maybe losing its moment of suspension. Check for soundness. When a judge says that your jog had a rhythm problem, you probably do have a soundness problem. Check, because it's a problem. One of the things that's happening for us now is that now that we're on a lot of videotape, let's say I'm judging along the jog, and I'm typing. So I decide to stop the videotape, and I look down to type because I want to type something specific or whatever, and I couldn't type it. And then I look up at that videotape, and that horse is supposed to be in a 2-beat jog, and I have 3 feet on the ground in the jog. Wow, that's a problem, and it shows. And let's say that it comes to your attention that every time you stop this horse, it's got 3 feet on the ground while it's in the jog. That horse is clearly, this is going on. Believe me, that's what that is. And it's going to have rhythm all through that. And 4, 4, 4. And it may not be marked lameness is a difficult thing for us to judge, in that a lot of times we're looking for horses to be very either long short or unlevel in height. And this horse, that wasn't the problem. It's lost the suspension. So that's a whole different ball game. But short tracking is not good. So get the horses closer to tracking so that their backs swing, keep the rhythm clear, do no harm. And the lope has to be 3 beats. And if it's not, and if you see the word rhythm, you're like, uh-oh, if the word rhythm is in there, you probably weren't in 3 beats. Labored is one of the words that in the canter that may come up. On the forehand, needs impulsion, lacks quality. And that's another euphemism for on the forehand, tight the back, possibly not as clear as it should be in the beating, and needs uphill balance is another thing that we talk about when the horse is so far on the forehand that it loses the 3 beats. Joanne, do you have some feelings about these? Have I covered this clearly, or do you have more thoughts that I missed?
Very clearly. I will sometimes refer to a gait without suspension as flat, needs swing, hoping, especially in the lower levels,
Okay.
to explain this a little bit more for the people who don't have a lot of experience. And even if they're really bad, the word shuffling, which they've got to be really bad. It's got to be like a 4 or a 4.5.
Right.
I,
Flat,
I
flat, I think they can really understand. I think that's a very good one. The swing there, of course, but that's more about the back, which is tricky. But flat is good. I like that. I mean, to anybody, that would be clear, even if you were a beginner, I think. That's very good commenting, Joanne. Awesome. Okay, collection. We're there. I was there drawing the pictures again. You can see I got real excited with the paint, opening the pictures in paint. But here's this picture of this great horse again, which is just going like, I just love the picture that I could draw on this horse up to its pole. This horse always looks wonderful. This horse always looks uphill and engaged. This is collected jog, very balanced rider. Shoulder in, from the judge's perspective, clearly 3 beats, the pole just barely above the withers, but still in some self carriage. And that was before this horse was at this level, which this is now the level 5, but this is what we were talking about drawing this on here. The horse reaching forward to the hand. We don't see any muscle tensioning in this horse. Neither does this horse have any. This horse looks relaxed. And you know, this spoke right here about suppleness and relaxation is 2 parts. God makes horses, you know, to be more supple as far as flexible. Some of this is their breeding, their conformation, their genetics. But then a lot of this is, are they emotionally relaxed with us? Are they being ridden in tension? Do the reins look, I mean, this horse clearly has connection, but you can see that right there? That's the inside rein. Her inside rein is softer than her outside rein. And remember, it's the outside rein that is responsible for the height and the length of the neck. And that shows that the inside rein is a little softer. Woohoo! This horse's reins are absolutely even, but this horse has no bend, is in lengthening jog, and should be totally straight. So for the moment, this rider's hands are absolutely even, and the weight is even in the reins while this horse extends itself completely. If she had her reins uneven, you would see a tip or a tilt in this horse, or she would not be straight. She'd have a maybe hollow on the left side, let's say, if this hand was low. So it's kind of interesting, fascinating to see pictures like this, which is cool. But self-carriage, here we go. We saw some of that. This horse is definitely uphill engagement. Also, here's engagement. Here's engagement. Here's engagement. So throughness, when we're talking again about throughness that we see, no, these horses don't look like they are tense. They don't look like they're, when you look at a horse and their muscles look rigid, you know, you're all balled up, throughness, you know, and we talk about the swing in the back. All of these horses look like they're moving loosely with athletic carriage, and that's throughness. So super cool. Hand steering. It's one of the things we see on tests. I didn't know how many of you were familiar with this term, but I use it a lot. And especially because people coming in from other divisions into Western, they've been in the habit of steering, and then they come into our division, and sometimes they've been riding one-handed in Western, and then they go to two hands, and they're in trouble steering. They're trying to figure out how to get to two-handedness off neck reining. And this gal again was very patient. Right here between R and M, you can see her move her hands all around and start steering him with the hands. And you saw what it did to him. It made the circle irregular, and he kind of goes bouncing around in his connection. But it was a perfect example. This is my friend Mary, she went out there and blew all of this stuff that day. We purposefully did not warm up her horse so he would short track. She's very kind to allow me to do this, so please forgive her. She can look wonderful, and we do have some nice pictures later, but she was trying to show us hand steering, and there she goes, like and this is what happens to the horses. that wasn't too bad. And if she was in an intro test doing that, she'd probably get like, what do you think, Joanna? 6'5" on that circle, 6'5", and we'd say, what? What would you say, Joanne?
I would say 6'5".
Yeah.
He gives me the feeling that he's relaxed and he's forward and he's trying to have a nice connection over the top line. So 6'5".
Yeah, he's just a little unsteady, and she was just a little using her hand a little bit, maybe worried about trying to set his head. And in a second, like right here, and in the transition, I cut the tape too fast, but right in that moment of transition, he went for a second behind the vertical, and of course his little white nose shows you that, and now he's a little bit short in the neck. But this was a perfect picture of that, and we had been talking about these, so just momentarily in the transition, he did that, but then he stretched out. But if he would go in the whole test like that, we might be moving our scores. Um, if a horse is a little unconnected, but it looks loose and forward, we're likely to be kind of in the 6'5" range. But if a horse it is consistently behind the vertical, we're on 6'0" and down. We're much happier to see horses that are loose and forward, not connected, than we don't want to see them too much behind. Do you agree with that, Joanne?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, that's a worse problem. Okay, alignment is always a tricky thing for everybody. And it is not easy to figure out. But one of the things we do is take still pictures and start drawing lines. And alignment means a lot of things. The basic alignment is, and I cut off this rider's ear. So sorry, but center of the ear, center of the middle of your ankle, not your heel for Western dressage. Because if you are on this heel, you're gonna be in a chair seat and you're not gonna be on the sweet spot of the horse. And there's the girth, and the sweet spot is right under this gal's ankle. So alignment is also this alignment, but it's also the balance of the rider left and right. Is she a little to the right, a little to the left? Now, here's a fascinating picture right here. That's the same rider, but she just came up to the halt. And if you look at the point of her knee right here and right here, this one is higher there. And then, interestingly enough, we drew a line across here, and this shows that this leg is further ahead than that leg. And this is off maybe by an inch. I don't know if you guys would have noticed that, but this is how subtle alignment can be. What is the problem? This rider's right seat bone is closer to the center of the horse. This leg is forward loose. Why do I know this? Sorry, girls, that's me. And I know what I do wrong. I've had back surgery and I've had damage to the left side of and my left leg, and I have to constantly work to keep my left leg back and to keep my thigh and my adductor as tight on the left as it is on the right. And I was at the end of the test, and I know me, I get tired, forgot what I was doing. Luckily, my horse stayed straight, but I can see right there, my leg's more forward. This isn't level, and I'm not level there, maybe by an inch, it's tough. You are looking, when you're looking at riders, you are looking across, are their shoulders level? Are their hands level? Are they in alignment? Are they centered on the horse? Now, I was saluting, so I can see that I've got my arm a little further back than I should have in my salute, and it pulled my shoulder back. But you are looking at those. We love snaps. Those snaps help me on a rider. I can't tell you. I can quickly decide if you're level. So we look kind of like those snaps, don't we, Joanne?
Yes, we do. And stripes.
Right.
Wear all the stripes.
Yeah. And I always look at people and I go, why didn't they pick out a solid black shirt? Because if you're not a perfect rider, you don't want, especially from the back, you don't want to help the judge. So help us. It's always easy to pick on us and pick on everybody, but a lot of us are aging, we have health problems, whatever. It is very hard to get into alignment. And in these Western saddles, we get into the butt bucket and get a little too far back sometimes, but this is a side view of if this rider could get her leg back further, but we end up in chair seat some, and even I do too. It can happen. One thing you want to pay attention to is getting your foot far enough into the stirrup, and you do not want to be on your toes. You want to be on the ball of your foot because the sweet spot that ergonomically drives the hind end is a good 4 to 6 inches behind your girth. So that means your thigh has to be vertical, leg back, and it doesn't mean this forward and then pull this back because you know you're going to end up with heels up. So that's all about the alignment. One of our memes, thank you, Dana. She's getting us laughing, but disinclined to acquiesce. Definitely not harmony over here on this team. Harmony is the word that we talk about instead of submission. And this is about the connection. Does the horse go on the bit? Does it accept the aids? Will it accept leg aids? How about if you see a rider that rides with her feet really forward, you know, not much contact with the horse, maybe has some really big spurs, whacks the horse once in a while with the spurs, you know, that isn't necessarily harmony because she doesn't have enough lower leg aid to be able to really get into some leg yield or some collection that's coming. You know, you can't ride off the spur and get collection because when you put the spur to a horse in the abdomen, it tightens those muscles. So relying on a spur all the time is not going to produce harmony. You have got to have acceptance of your leg. The horse is going to have to be round to the connection. And we're going to use all these words on the bit, frame, balance. These are going to be on your test papers. The box under collective marks and under harmony talks about a free-flowing performance and also a free-flowing athletic performance. And we were talking about horses that didn't have enough energy, or impulsion, and possibly didn't track up by a lot, not by a little, but by a lot, or maybe even looked sluggish. And we're going to be commenting here that it was not an athletic performance. Someone who by mistake comes into Western dressage, maybe they came from the pleasure division and it's their first time, and they're giving us that really slow jog that's almost broken, might not have any suspension, too slow, can't be in balance, isn't uphill because there isn't enough impulsion. We're talking to them about you don't have an athletic free-flowing performance. Harmony, it is about the horse being relaxed enough. We were looking at those horses a couple of slides ago that were uphill, engaged. They were trucking, all of them, beautiful. But they were pretty much emotionally relaxed. We're looking for things. Do they look like they're easy to ride? We don't want them to look stressed. We don't want to see tail swishing, mouth open, neck twisting, pole twisting. Judges are going to comment on this. If you see neck twisting or pole twisting, those aren't good things, and there's big deductions for those, but that's what they're talking about. And it's not only that the horse is, you know, has the right conformation to be loose and supple, but that it's emotionally confident with you and the situation it's in. On any given day, a really good horse can be having a really good job, and then something unexpected happens and surprises it or scares it or frightens it. And then a horse that you've looked at many times, and it always looked relaxed and it's super talented and always gets big scores, all of a sudden it has a meltdown. And horses do that, it happens. And then you see it looked tense, it's trying to shy, its mouth was open, its tail was swishing. It can happen to the best of us. One of the things that we train our judges to really look at is do not mistake harmony for nothing. If I see a rider that really doesn't ask much of anything for the horse, and the horse doesn't do much for a performance, it's not really very forward, it's not really very connected, it pleasantly goes around a little test, but it doesn't really excel at anything. You didn't ask it to do anything. And when you don't ask a horse to do a lot, and that isn't harmony because you didn't ask. You don't have the potential to have disharmony because you didn't ask for anything. And that is something that we do have new riders coming in saying, well, gee, there was this horse that was really doing some demanding work, and for a second it came off the bit. But somebody was really asking a lot of that horse, and for a second it came off the bit. Now I went around intro and my horse isn't tracking up and it's going really slowly. And I did a perfect little pattern. You didn't ask your horse for much. So I'm not going to mistake that lack of asking for harmony. Granted, nothing bad happened, but you didn't do much. That's kind of a C. You sat in class, you didn't take too many notes, and you passed the test, but not well. Okay, I'm with you. It's okay. You did okay. But that doesn't give you a big harmony score because you didn't ask for a lot. Oh, yeah. Was that Joanne? Joanne, you want to chime in on the harmony?
Sure. In my mind, if the horse does not fulfill the requirements of the level, it cannot get a high score in harmony.
So you're saying if maybe the horse had like a 6 or a 6.5 under impulsion, it didn't have a real strong score up there, maybe 6, because it didn't go forward throughout the test and wasn't active.
It goes to what you were just saying about the rider isn't asking the horse to do anything, so it just kind of steers its way through the test. And from even in level 1, but definitely level 2 and above, there are requirements besides just, doing the gaits.
Right. And the requirements they're demanding, really, you
yes.
get to second level and there's shoulder in and haunches in and the side pass, and then it's either pivot or turn on the haunches. It's very demanding. So yes, we are looking for that.
And if the horse, like you said, if the horse says no for a stride or two and the rider smoothly handles the situation, I'm not going to hold that against them too much.
That's awesome. This is Dana, and she very kindly gave me some little clips, pictures of this horse of her just at the beginning. This was a turn and a comment as she went around the corner and started onto a diagonal. So here she was before she made the turn, and here she was, not on the bit, but has been in the corner, 6.5. And it was at intro level. And the judge was trying to say to her, well, I thought you did a great job bending, but don't really have the horse connected. And then in the same test, where she was sort of in this balance and frame throughout the test, the judge gave her a 7 on harmony and said, willing horse, I could go higher if the horse was rounder and lifting his back. Do you want to tell us your reaction to that, Dana, and how you dealt with it? What happened?
Yeah, so this was the online international, and I think it is important to get educated on what the comments mean, because I knew the judge was trying to tell me something, but I just didn't know. And so this was, I think, a team one. And I think I ended up reaching out to Kim to ask her a little bit, what does this mean? I thought I didn't have to be on the bit, in intro. And so basically she gave me a really excellent explanation of I think she's just trying to push you to say hey, I see good bits of this, let's do more of it. And so I really then got into okay, my connection's not great. I don't have a good connection and I need to keep that really steady. And that really changed my riding a lot, for the better. So it was really good to understand what this comment meant.
And it's true that it's not required an intro. It says that a horse will accept the aids and accept the hand, but it is rewarded and this judge was giving you a clue like, hey, if you could do this, I could go up. If you would do this, I could go up. There's things that they let us say and things they don't let us say. So we have to be really careful. But yes. And did you say that was Kim that gave you that advice? Kim Smart?
Yeah, because I think this was one of the tests I used for like our team on the Online International. I think what's great, we all share our videos and like watch each other. So it's a really like open place. And so, yeah, I asked because I was like, I know that there's something behind this comment to help me improve, but I'm not grasping it. So she really explained it well to me, and that changed it. And then I have a comment here from Andrea. I have learned tons from comments given on tests by both Ida and Joanne. As a rider, I can tell you both care and want the best for both horse and rider. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. All right, we're up to questions. Here's some of my credentials, but you can go look at those anytime. We're going to move along for a second, though. This we just put on here is a couple of short, really quick videos for exercises to correct chair seats. Those are just there for anybody that gets onto this video later and they need help. They don't have an instructor or whatever. You guys know my YouTube channel. There's some stuff out here. And there it is if you need it. We're going to back up to questions, but I just wanted to show you these end screens because these end screens will help you get to education. And on this YouTube channel, these talks like we're having tonight right here are posted so that eventually after these become public and after we're finished this series, these will be posted here so you can get your friends onto them and whatever. So we're going back to questions and comments. So do we have any other people in the chat? And thank you all for being so patient. Did we have more comments, Dana, from people?
I don't have any comments for the webinar. I do have some of the comments sent in that I think are just fun from the further remarks and general impressions.
Good.
I like tactfully presented horse in difficult conditions today. Comment from the rider was when my horse was melting down about the indoor arena and judge's box.
That was nice. Okay, so the judge was trying to say something tactful, when it's obvious it's not going well.
Yeah, I think I've had a couple of those too. Like my horse like leaps and bounds because something spooked them, and like a comment's very similar to that. Like unfortunate conditions.
Yes.
Let's see. Oh, this one was nice. A lovely test, fun to watch. This rider said, I was so proud of this. I kept the test. I like that.
That's good. That's a good one. Yes. Oh, I didn't. Oh, do we have the comment from the mudder? Remember we had one.
Oh, yes. So this one is awesome mutter. Great job using the railing corners correctly with large puddles today.
I thought that was a good one. I was laughing about that because that can be a real problem sometimes. We can be in really bad conditions and a lot of things going on. So.
Oh, and Tammy has a question. She says, is it fair to say that forward does not mean fast?
It does. It is. And forward means to cover ground. That the direction the horse is going, it's got to go forward. However, with that being said, here's a small caveat. A lot of times people say to me, especially in the walk, and we're trying to get the horses to track up and things, and they're like, I understand that if I make my horse quicker, the steps will get shorter. And in order to get the horses to be more active, we have to energize them. And it's a little counterintuitive because we ask them to show more energy and they actually quicken up a little bit and then they march because they're walking slower than march tempo. And sometimes when that happens, they're not tracking up. So it can be a little counterintuitive. But when you see the word forward, judges are usually thinking about showing energy and the direction they're going. And that is how it's technically supposed to be used. But sometimes by mistake, judges are just enthusiastic and they use the word forward a little bit like slangy. We're human too. We don't always use the words absolutely properly. And we're getting at, get it moving, get trucking, like go. So it can sometimes be used a little bit like that. I don't see it very often. Our colleagues are really well educated, but I know I have used it that way myself. I hope I didn't write it on a test, but I sometimes say that when I'm teaching somebody, get forward. I'm not using it really correctly, but it's a fun term.
Love
Good
it.
question.
I have a question on one. So like, obedient horse, I guess, what does that mean? That they just did it well, or?
Well, I think when we write that, that we're trying to say that the horse was attentive to the rider. We didn't see it looking distracted. And that it seemed to, especially if I write obedient horse, I think that the test was relatively accurate, and the horse was attentive to the rider, not distracted, and that it was generally round to the bridle. And then there's probably some adverbs and adjectives after that. It'll say obedient horse because we're trying to think of something to say to you, like, I appreciate this horse. And then it might say, how about something like, with more energy, your performance could have more brilliance today. What do you think, Joanne? Because obedient horse.
I use the word willing quite often.
Oh,
When I
that's
see a horse that's nicely forward without rushing, and that's really on the aids, the horse and rider are connected well together.
right. I like that. Willing's a good one. And I think, yeah, and usually after the obedient horse, though, they usually don't just write obedient horse. They write, and I think what they're getting at is that usually there's something else after that. And it's like, yeah,
Yes.
they paid attention to you. You did everything, but you may be looking for a little more of this or a little spark of that, and there'll be something to tell you. And that's another thing too. It's really great to get a test like the comment that came in that's just like great test, fun to watch. But I have to get a really, I have to get a really big score to be happy, with that comment. And I would be happy with that comment, and I would keep that test like that lady did. But if I get a 72%. And I see that the person ahead of me in the test got a 75. No matter how good your score is, you're always looking for, okay, if you only gave me a 7 on that movement, I just did a shoulder in and you only gave me a 7, that the judge is not required to write anything in the box if they give you a 7 and up. And sometimes it's so crazy judging that they can't. And for whatever reason, you don't know what their problem is. They're freezing to death. They're starving to death. They haven't had a bathroom break in forever. The TD's bothering them while they're judging. The scribe can't keep up. The scribe's hands are frozen. I don't know what the problem is, but there can be hundreds and hundreds of problems of why they don't comment, especially when the scribes can't keep up. We have to stop commenting because they're getting behind and it's messing up your test. So if I have a choice between I have to stop commenting but get the right numbers, I have to be sure that person gets the right numbers, and I've got to cut down my comments, and that happens more than you'd like. So those of you that are young and you don't have carpal tunnel, offer to scribe, because you want to get those scores and you want as many comments as you can. And if I have to cut down my comments because the scribe can't keep up, that's nutty. But it happens more than you want to know. But if I only get a 7, I'm sitting there going, what does this need to get an 8? What does it need to get a 10? And if a judge has the patience or the time or a good enough scribe to write that down for you, write a letter to USEF that says, hey, this is an awesome judge, or go and tell the secretary, thank you for getting them, or go by and thank the scribe on the way by, or anything. because if they actually have the time and energy to comment on something that's good and tell you away, I mean, I have been known to write on somebody that I gave a 75 to. I'm not allowed to say, I think you can get an 80. They tell us not to rate that because that's like promising something that you're not sure they're capable of. But have I said, this was a lovely test. I really liked it. And with just a tiny bit more energy, I think it could be even more brilliant. Yes. And if I get a comment like that, like, I had the pleasure for writing for my friend Joanne, she's on here, writing for her in the international. And she did that for me. She gave me some good scores, but even when she gave me a 7 or a 7.5 or an 8, she wrote a comment that let me know what she appreciated, but what could make that even better, maybe a 10. That's an awesome judge. And don't expect it all the time because we can't because of all kinds of things going on. But if you see that, that's amazing. And thank you, my friend Joanne. She's a wonderful colleague, and I appreciated that really good judging.
Well, that's mutual because I have written for you and reread my papers and read them again and learned from them. And I really do appreciate it.
It's always an honor. I mean, it is always an honor to be asked to judge anyone, anywhere, anytime. And I really feel that it's an honorable profession and we're humbled to be asked. And we're grateful to you for your patience in asking us. We try to be kind, but we unfortunately have to be deadly honest. If we're not, we can't keep our scale. And there's no point in telling you you're doing great when you're not. But we are genuinely wanting to be as kind as possible while we try to give you as many hints as we can which way to go. Well, I know I've kept you all way over. Do we have more questions? And we know that you may need to be going because we ran over tonight, but it was such a fun call. And thank you, Joanne, for joining us. We appreciate that.
And can I add just a
Yes.
little bit more
Yes,
for the
please.
exhibitors, especially in the live shows? You know, we've got, when we're judging, we really are trying to be as helpful as we can. But as far as comments go, if we don't say something for 7 and above, there's a couple things we have to be watching. We have to be watching the schedule that we don't get behind, and we have to be watching that we're not killing our scribes. Most scribes are volunteers and they do a wonderful job. I often ask my scribe, how's your arm? Am I saying too much? Should I say less? And I do the best I can to shorten my comments so that the scribes can keep up.
Yes.
But
And they are
thank you all.
volunteers. Yes, thank you to them because we couldn't do our jobs without them. And their job is equally as hard as ours, maybe harder, I don't know, because they have a very, very difficult job. And the conditions are always terrible. It's a terrible thing to say, but it's too hot, it's too cold. It's dusty, it's dirty. Somebody spilled coffee on your clothes. Like there's a bee in the box. I've had snakes in the box. Like these people, they're willing to volunteer and sit there for hours and hours in all kinds of conditions. And their arms do get exhausted and their hands hurt. And they're doing the best they can. And they're awesome. And thank you. It is true. Thanks for saying thank you, Joanne, because we didn't mean not to thank them. But also volunteer when you can, because horse shows, we need more volunteers. So thank you. All right, we better wrap it up, but I want to thank all of you. Dana, again, thank you. Tammy, thank you for allowing us to have the vision to go ahead with this. Joanne, for the special guest starring here, for coming and being with us. I can't thank you enough. And to everyone else, we're grateful for you being here. We will get the links out for you to review and to share with your friends, and it will be posted up on the WDGA shortly. Dana's very good at that. Dana, thank you for all this preparation.
Thank you, Ida.
You're welcome. we will see and talk to you all next month on the second Tuesday. Forget what, it's the, no, the first Tuesday is the, oops, I don't have it in front of me there. Maybe Dana does, but the date, anyway, first Tuesday of the month, and we're gonna be helping you get into the ring. So
I love it.
until then, thank you all. Have fun riding and enjoy the journey, and I hope this was helpful. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.